user-generated content, the hierarchy of the following, and is there like addictive dopamine, quick hitting?
Not necessarily. You could imagine a form of social media that wasn't about quick dopamine, but the ones that we have, because as Meta pioneered the advertising-driven business model, at first, apps were charging money, but then they all quickly discovered, if you offer the app for free, but it's just paid for by advertising, you'll get millions of people taking your app. So once Facebook pioneered the advertising-driven business model and others joined in, now the race is on to, I got to grab your eyeballs before he does. If I don't do everything I can to get you to stay on my platform, then he's going to get you to stay on his platform. So that all begins in earnest in the early 2010s, that savage competition. And to throw kids into that, so kids' attention, kids' eyeballs are like the oil fields in Alaska. Like everybody's competing to let's sink a drill and let's suck it out before someone else does.
So, do you think that this is a problem isolated only to kids, or do you think this is playing a role on our minds in some way as well?
Yeah, it is certainly playing a role in our minds too. But there's two reasons why I've focused on kids. Three reasons, or two or three, and why I don't talk a lot about adults. Although I'm beginning to a bit more, because adults are constantly saying to me, "It's not just the kids; it's me too."
Yeah.
When we come to attention in particular, it's all of us. But the reasons I focus on kids are twofold. The first is that kids are going through this massive brain change. I mean, from birth through puberty, and especially during puberty. And so whatever weirdness, whatever weird scenario you're putting them in continually is going to have much bigger effects and possibly permanent effects, because their brain is literally changing from the child form to the adult form. The adult form can take many forms, in different cultures, we have slightly different brains in that culture got into, our brain different from a Japanese person or an Indian person. So, the importance of acting quickly for children is much greater than it is for adults. Adults, if we stop all this stuff, we'll get our brains back. Our brains aren't being changed very much. It's our habits that are making it hard for us to pay attention, but our brains will recover. Johan Hari has a great book, Stolen Focus, where he goes to Provincetown for 3 months for summer and he gets his brain back. So that's one. The other is that, we're a generally libertarian nation, and I have a lot of libertarian sympathies, and I don't want to tell adults what to do unless there's a really, really compelling reason for it. Whereas we also live in a world in which lots of people are out to get children, predators, companies, people make addictive products. They're all out to get children as customers or victims. And so we have a much more protective attitude towards children. And we know, and this was one of the amazing things that came out in in the social media trials in Los Angeles, is that these companies, and here we mean Meta, Snapchat, TikTok, and YouTube. Those are the 4 companies that thousands of parents are suing because they damaged their kids. We have internal documents from all of them about how they were trying to hook kids. They used the word addiction until I think in 2019, Meta sent out a memo saying, do not use the word addiction anymore because it could show up in documents. Call it problematic use, which sure, that is actually perhaps a better term, but it still means compulsive use that you can't control and that leads you to live in ways that you don't want and that cause harm to you. So we know that they're all competing to hook kids. So that's the second reason, is that we all agree we can protect kids. And then a third related reason is this is totally bipartisan. That's one of the exciting things about this. This is one of the few topics in American life where Republicans and Democrats agree this is terrible what's happening. We need to stop it. We need phone-free schools. We need to raise the age to 16. We need to protect our kids from these predatory companies.
Yeah. You mentioned phone-free schools. I worked with Governor Kathy Hochul in trying to push this in New York. I don't know if you're aware, because I work a little bit in the political spectrum. I think it's come out that the TikTok CEO, Adam Presser, is going and trying to reverse phone bans in schools.
Who's trying to reverse it?
The TikTok CEO.
Oh, good luck. Phone-free schools are so popular with teachers. Teachers love it. There is no way that this is getting reversed.
But I think it speaks to the villain mindset that you're describing of these companies.
Yeah, like if we ban cocaine and then the Cocaine Association says, no, don't ban cocaine. Like, come on, there's no way they're going to be successful.
But you know what? I would agree with you intuitively. But then I see the FDA just approved fruity flavored vapes that are extremely popular with children. So I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, no, I mean, so there's a wonderful book called The Age of Addiction by David Courtwright. It's fascinating. He traces out humans have always sought pleasure. And it used to be, we had to work hard to get pleasure. You had to take down a beehive and get stung in order to get something sweet, you know? And that's slow dopamine. That's like, you have a goal, you work hard,
The
you
delayed
get
gratification.
Delayed, right. So that's all good. That's all, and that's what we evolved for. And that's what we want our kids to grow up learning. Set a goal, work towards it. And when you get it, it will be sweet. Okay, but what's happened as we go into modernity, as we go into the age of discovery, and you've got ships going all around the world, and now you've got sugar, and you've got tobacco, and you've got all these things moving around. You get much more addiction, and you get market forces. You get companies that are trying to push it, and then we enter the industrial age, and now it's not just you have tobacco leaves; you have machines that can make millions of cigarettes in a day, and they're cheap. And they're pushed everywhere, and they were pushed on kids, and they were pushed in high schools in the 50s and 60s. So you get this constant process of both the concentration of the reward, so that you don't just have, honey's pretty darn sweet, but fruit is very good, but now like the kids don't even want fruit because there's so many sweeter things. So you get the concentration, and that happens with drugs. You go from opium poppies to heroin to fentanyl. You get this concentration. And you get a removal of friction. As you mentioned before, friction is part of life. We need a world with friction. But what the digital world has done is say, how about you can have any vice you want, anytime, no shame, instant. You want porn, you got it. You want gambling, you got it. It's everywhere. You want nicotine, it's everywhere. So we're going down this road that Courtwright describes, and we desperately need. This is one of the major roles of government, is to prevent a free market society from having competition. Competition is usually good among firms, but competition to hook kids before the other guy does, there's no way to stop that as a race to the bottom other than government saying, stop it. Stop it.
Why do you think our government's not doing that?
Well, that's our government. Yes. I guess we do have a government. And look, actually, this is very important. State governments have been amazing. And kudos to Kathy Hochul, kudos to Governor Murphy. And this has been totally red state, blue state. I mean, I've talked with a lot of governors. Most of them are acting on this. Most states have now passed phone-free school legislation in some form. So the governors are doing great. We do have state governments that work. Our Congress, of course, is a mess. It was designed one way, but it has ended up another. And it's so cheap. I mean, people marvel at how cheap it is to buy influence in the U.S. You don't need tens of millions of dollars. You can do it for a lot less. So I don't know what happened with the FDA. I have no idea. I don't want to comment on the FDA. But at least with Congress, Meta and others, they spend a lot of money and they can stop anything in the House. And that's what's been happening. Yeah.
I'll fill you in on the FDA situation. Okay. I think it was as simple as some of the nicotine execs golfing with the president and asking for this passing to be made. And that's so destructive. Given the fact that we had the most recent outgoing FDA commissioner on the podcast talking about the problems that kids face. And now we're reinventing the problem. And this topic of friction has come up so often on the podcast. And usually we're talking about it in the sense of a positive way, that friction creates love, delayed gratification. But friction also stops problems. So what is unique about our previous pandemic that we just had, and I say previous because who knows what's coming in store for us. The reason why SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, spread so widely and so wildly is because of asymptomatic spread. Friction was reduced.
Okay.
So people who were feeling okay were walking out and spreading this virus. Whereas SARS-CoV-1 was nearly lethal. So those people were very sick, created lots of friction for spread, didn't spread as readily, was lethal. A lot of people died, but not as many people died with SARS-CoV-2.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So when I think about vapes as an example, to me, it's very obvious from scientific literature that vaping is less harmful than true cigarette smoking. I think that's a fair point to say. But it's not a zero game. Right. They're still bad for you, and there's issues with addiction.
Addictive. Yeah. You're changing your dopamine system.
Incredibly, especially at a sensitive time. Yeah. But what is frightening to me is that there's no friction. Yeah. They don't smell really bad.
Oh,
you can do them in secret.
That's right. There's no shame.
There's no shame, like with cigarettes that exist today. The speed at which you can do it, you don't need to light anything. Smoke alarms don't catch it. Right. You could vape at a park. You can't smoke at a park.
Yeah.
So suddenly the friction is gone. The use case scenario expands. The addiction potential actually increases because the nicotine amounts in the vape are higher than that is what is found in a cigarette. So it's like this perfect confluence of events to make kids hooked on it.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And the reason I'm smiling as you're saying this is that you activated a memory that I think will illuminate the point you just made. When you were talking, the phrase occurred in my mind from my high school physics class. I remember the physics teacher, Mr. New was his name. And he was giving us a problem. He said, imagine a frictionless monkey swinging from a tree. Like, it's like, okay. And then he says, imagine a frictionless world in which a monkey is swinging from a tree. And then he stops and says, well, no, you couldn't have a frictionless world because it would fall apart instantly. Like nothing would hold together if there was no friction. And that's, I think, what's happening to us with the digital transformation is that there used to be some friction for everything. If you want to get your opinion out, lots of ways to do it, but you have to find a postage stamp or you have to write something. You couldn't just snap your fingers and have things happen. But the technology has increasingly become like magic. You just snap your fingers and things happen. And if you want to do something, you can just do it. When we're talking about adults trying to do their work in the world, that's mostly a good thing. Like I'm all in favor of tools that help us adults do our jobs better. But when it comes to children need friction. The last thing you want is to make your child's life effortless and frictionless. And especially when it comes to vice, this is the thing that's so upsetting to me now. When I wrote the book, I wasn't thinking about gambling, but I was writing in like 2023 especially. And then by 2024, 25, now it's everywhere. It's throughout not young childhood, but high school boys they used to watch sports a lot and talk about sports. And now a lot of it's about the betting. You don't have to be 18 to bet. There's all kinds of ways around it. And so again, I just want everyone to understand the technology has given us a world that has changed certain parameters so that in a way we're getting close to the vision that my high school physics teacher had of a frictionless world in which everything's going to fall apart.
Yeah, I think we've lost the system of checks and balances that we need to make a true free capitalist society work. Because the way that I imagine is there's all these forces that constantly want to get more people to gamble, to spend more time on social media, to create addictive algorithms, vapes, what have you. And then it used to be that the government would be able to be the force that ends that and says, we got to have some controls in place. We got to regulate this so that we don't create a race to the bottom. But instead what has happened, the capitalist forces have got so strong that they're now buying the government from stopping them doing these things. And until we, I think, become more aware of it and call it out publicly, I don't know where the buck will stop.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right that there are regulatory systems that we've developed over a couple of centuries that will encourage economic dynamism. We want people to innovate, start companies, invent products, sell, market them, sell them, advertise them. We want that all to happen, but you have to have conditions that encourage efficient markets where there's no monopoly, there's no external costs foisted on people who aren't part of the transaction. There's all sorts of things you need to have a vibrant free market society. And over time, we developed those institutions, and the FDA being really a great example of one. But we've also always been subject to corruption. Every system is. And as money has played a larger role in our politics, and of course it did in the 19th, it's not that this is new, but it fluctuates. But as money is playing a huge role nowadays, it's so easy to buy influence. I think our health, our public health and our children's health is being sacrificed in a really dramatic way. And so, but you know what? I've been so dark so far.
I was about to say end stage capitalism is in my head right now.
Because it is, you start studying one problem, like, okay, social media and depression. And then you find out, wait, no, it's social media and gambling and porn and, and all the dopamine things. And it's all these outcomes and it's attention. So like the problem keeps getting bigger and bigger. But let me turn this around by saying, here's the amazing thing. We're actually working on it. Like we're actually making incredible progress in the last year or two. So when I started this, my book came, you and I talked, I think soon after the book came in 2024. Yep. And, people thought it was crazy. Like, you're going to have an age limit for social media? Good luck. How are you going to enforce that? People thought it was just crazy to think that we could change this. And it's, the train's left the station. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. It's, so people just, there was a fatalism. There was a sense of resignation. We can't change this. But an amazing thing happened, which is that the mothers of the world were so upset by this already. The mothers were felt it. They felt their kids being pulled away. And I think they felt it more than fathers did on average. And so as soon as my book came out in 2024, and this was around the world, even countries I didn't go to, whenever it came out, groups of mothers would form or were already beginning to form, and they jumped into action, and they started demanding action, and they started getting phone-free schools and raising the age to 16 in countries around the world, especially Brazil, Australia, in the UK. So much happened really quickly, driven by the mothers. And I'm so excited by this because authoritarian countries are better able to deal with this so far. China, they look at this and they say, okay, we're putting on time limits. Chinese kids can only play an hour of video games. I can't remember the rules, but there's very tight restrictions. They can do that in an authoritarian country. Democracy is much more vibrant. I love America. I care a tremendous amount about what's happening to American democracy. I want to make it vibrant and strong. And if we can't handle this, if we can't protect our own kids from what is now clearly damaging their development, then it's kind of game over for the Western democracies. But and you said at the beginning, you seem relaxed, you seem like in good spirits. And part of it is we really are making so much progress. And so even though Congress has been disappointing, but the states have been incredible, and countries around the world have been amazing, and families across the country and around the world have been acting. So I think we are seeing a resurgence of a kind of a democratic vitality or vibrance when people are discovering, wait, we can change our local school. Oh, wait, we can change the law in our state. So I am actually really excited. It's an exciting time. It's a scary time, but it is an exciting time because there's some really positive counter trends.
Yeah, from the counter trend perspective, what I'm seeing is there's a little bit of user fatigue of social media, and platforms are trying unique things. Like Instagram just launched this new feature called Instance, where you try and share something in the moment so that you're in the moment, not creating a specific tailored version of who you are. And I don't see huge uptake. I see people being proud that they don't have social media profiles. I see more and more accounts being private where they only have 100 friends, more like how social media started from the MySpace era. So that's interesting. I'm curious from the Gen Z perspective, what has their feedback been to you about your work?
So we have a new book out called The Amazing Generation, Your Guide to Fun and Freedom in a Screen-Filled World. And it's for kids 8 to 13 who might be just getting phones. And the book is not just about like, don't grow up on phones. It's about living an exciting life with your friends in the real world, doing things in the real world. And in the book, we have little snippets from interviews with older Gen Z. Older Gen Z is so important because they're now turning 30. The oldest of Gen Z are turning 30 or 29 this year. And when kids read all these young adults saying, I missed out on my childhood. You only get one childhood, and I spent it, scrolling. Or one young man said, I wish I had gotten to know my grandfather better before he died, instead of always being on my video game when he came over. This kid didn't get to know his grandfather. And so the wistfulness, the tragedy that so many young people see is really powerful for the younger kids. I have spoken at so many universities and a lot of high schools, and I give my presentation, and then I always say, okay, members of Gen Z, raise your hand if you were born after 1995. And some raise their hand. I say, okay, just you. Did I largely get this right or wrong? I mean, did I have said some things that paint a negative picture of generation? Please tell me. Do you think I largely got this right or wrong? In all the time I've done it, maybe 3 hands have gone up to say wrong. Like they know, that's the thing. Gen Z, they are not in denial. They know that this is bad for them. And so when they see a way forward, now they're really acting. There are a lot of Gen Z groups now. If you go to anxiousgeneration.com, we have a whole page of aligned organizations. There are dozens and dozens of groups started by members of Gen Z to come together in the real world. There's the Luddite Club, was started in 2 high schools in Brooklyn. Design It For Us is one that's been around for a long time. So Gen Z is really getting active here.
It's interesting. You're talking about feedback in speaking at schools. I had this previous conversation with a gentleman talking about appearance and how it impacts a worldview. And I was partially playing devil's advocate, but also standing up for my patients that struggle with anxiety, depression, body dysmorphia. I was explaining that working on your mental health doesn't necessarily require working on your aesthetic version of yourself. I was explaining that cultural norms change widely, and that what is beautiful in one place might be not beautiful in another, and how that shifts. And I was trying to just create an alternative viewpoint to my guest. And yet a lot of the comments were unhappy with the fact that they believed I was disconnected from reality or from their reality. What is the correct way to speak about this? Because I know you have a lot of experience for me to get better in communicating there. Or is that just a problem?
No, that is super interesting the way you put it, because what I've seen, is members of Gen Z are very receptive to my arguments about what, this is the problem. But then a lot of them can't imagine there's an alternative. They say, well, but if we don't have social media, how would we connect? They've only known it. And so they can't understand that before 2010, there was some Facebook, but people, they called each other, they texted each other. You have so many ways on the internet. and you can get together in person. So I've seen a sort of because this is all they've ever known, and it's totally overwhelming and encompassing. And then you say, hey, how about we take away this world and give you a better one? They're like, I can't imagine what that will be. And I think it's the same thing here for boys growing up, or kids growing up in this, like, it's all about your looks. It's all about your looks. Like, oh, well, you're out of touch. Like, that's just the way it is. Like, no, that is not the way it has to be. They're right that that's the way it is. It does not have to be that way. That's the message that my movement is trying to convey. And that's what we're actually making some progress, because nobody really wants it that way. It's called a collective action trap. Nobody wants it to be this way. But if anyone opts out and says, I'm not going to work on my looks, well, now they're at a disadvantage in some ways. But I think a better way to respond to that line of argument and that fellow who advocated everyone working on their looks, let's just spend a moment talking about what leads to happiness, because we actually know a lot about that. The whole field of positive psychology is about that. What are the conditions of human flourishing? And it's not rising in status on this one dimension of looks. It's the degree of embeddedness that you have between yourself and others, yourself and your work or something productive, and yourself and something larger than yourself. This is the conclusion I come to in my book, The Happiness Hypothesis. I synthesized ancient wisdom, modern psychology, but it fits with Sigmund Freud, who said love and work are the two key areas. So the point is, we want to raise kids, and we want to be ourselves people who have lots of close relationships, not a huge number, but close. We have we are embedded, connected, and we do something that matters to others. We have a job, we care for kids, we're doing something, teens who have chores, so we have to matter to other people. And we especially thrive when we feel we're part of some sort of a larger community or a moral order. We need an overarching moral framework. So if those are three conditions for human flourishing, what has the technology done to it? Relationships, shallow, swipe-based. The more connected people are, the lonelier they are, because it's replaced human relationships, not augmented them. Work, a sense of purpose and meaning that you matter to others. AI is threatening to take away vast numbers of jobs. The technology routinely makes it that we don't need anyone else. You can have an AI friend, you can have an AI girlfriend, boyfriend, sex partner. So the technology is in many ways dehumanizing us by blocking relationships, blocking our ability to matter to others, and shredding any common moral framework or moral canopy under which we can have a sense of coherence. So this is the world that the technology is taking us into. And I think we're beginning to see an awakening. The fact that a number of commencement speakers were booed recently because they mentioned AI, I think there is a techlash. And even though I was always very techno-optimist my whole childhood and all the way into the 2010s, I think that technology is now really dehumanizing us. And I'm inspired that people are beginning to see this and take action.
Mm-hmm. What do you think the three trends we can expect over the next 10, 20 years in this space would be?
Analog schools is for sure one. AI resistance becoming a political movement, probably with more violence. And an unfortunate class divide over protecting kids. So the class divide is this. So think about obesity and junk food. 20th century comes, food's everywhere, junk food's everywhere. Then eventually we have a movement to sort of stop eating junk food. Okay, what's the class divide? It's upper class people, college educated people. They're trying to eat healthy. They're trying to, to avoid junk food. Working class, lower class people they're not in that. There are also financial constraints. And so obesity, which used to, or heaviness used to be a sign of wealth. You could afford food. But since the 20th century, it's a sign of class. Wealthier people are thinner. They're able to avoid certain vices. So that's what we learned from the 20th century.
And GLP-1 access.
Exactly. There you go. So the rich can do all sorts of things to protect themselves and their kids, and the poor have fewer resources and are not as likely to respond to those health messages.
I'm curious on that class divide issue. Have you seen any trends on the social media side of things? Mm-hmm. Are poor kids more susceptible to the harms of social media? And why?
So one thing that we know for sure is the usage stats. So Pew and Gallup have good stats on, how many hours a day are you on? And then they break it down by class and gender and everything. And the big differences are that girls more than boys are on social media. Girls is more than 5 hours a day, just social media. Boys a little less than 5 hours. Class, where kids in wealthier families have much less total screen time. Kids in poor families, much more screen time. Race, so Black and Hispanic kids have more screen time. And I believe that's true even if you partial out class. Those are two of the biggest ones. LGBTQ kids are on more than others. And so all of those groups are more vulnerable. And when I said a class divide, what I mean is especially a class divide in responsiveness. And so when the Anxious Generation came out in 2024, it made the rounds in all the fancy private schools, the mothers who are really intense and focused on reading the research and like do what's good for the kids.
Right.
And there's a lot of research showing that working class, lower class people, they have what was once called natural growth parenting. The idea that your kid is not your pet project to soup up and like kids will do what they do. And so we're seeing a huge amount of uptake. So the four norms that I propose in the Anxious Generation: no smartphone before high school, no social media before 16, phone-free schools, and far more independence, free play, responsibility in the real world. Those four norms, sort of upper class neighborhoods, wealthy suburbs, huge uptake. Those parents are getting together, they're creating playborhoods, their kids are riding bicycles with each other. And I think what we're seeing, you asked me for trends, I think we're beginning to see, so I expect that it will grow unless we can reverse it, is that wealthy families will increasingly be able to protect their children from digital harms. And the digital harms will be concentrated in the bottom half or 2/3 of the economic distribution, which is tragic. And that's one of the reasons why phone-free schools is so important, because it levels the playing field. Because outside of school, the working class kids are on much more often. They spend much more of their lives on devices.
It's interesting because an advantage that I saw growing up poor, we were on welfare in Brooklyn, going to a public school, was that the kids that were part of the richer families, they struggled to form connection and perhaps work through adversity as often. And there was actually an advantage to growing up as an immigrant. At least that's how I feel for me and a lot of my friends in the same group. And now that advantage is almost gone because when there's something so fun and inexpensive and addictive that you could spend a ton of time on, why would you ever go and try and work hard?
That's right. I think what you said is absolutely right. I believe I've seen research about that. And certainly there, decades ago, there was so many cases of these rich schools, these rich neighborhoods with huge suicide rates and kids who are overwhelmed. And so, I wouldn't have said that rich kids are healthier 20, 30 years ago, mentally healthier. But I think we're beginning to see that. Now, of course, it's complicated. The rich kids still have vast pressures on them for college and all of that. But in terms of protection from digital harms, there I think we do see a huge class divide. One way to look at it, and this is one thing that David Courtwright says, a metaphor that he uses, is companies are dangling hooks in front of kids. And these hooks are quick dopamine, anything that will give you a quick dopamine. And, when I was growing up, I mean, you couldn't get porn, you couldn't buy it. You had to, you couldn't gamble. You had to steal from a cousin or older brother or something. So I mean, there were vices,
which that probably brought you together more than any harm from seeing
unless you're too ashamed about it. But anyway, the point is, there were temptations, but they were few and far between. And now, especially once the kids are online, imagine your son, especially, this is more for the boys and the girls, imagine your son just sitting there on a screen, surrounded by fishhooks, baited with the most delicious stuff. And they're all saying, bite me, no, bite me. And that's childhood.
Yeah.
So again, I'm putting things in a kind of extreme way. I'm not saying this is literally what childhood is, but this is the change we've seen once everything went digital.
Yeah. It's why I think also marijuana use also disproportionately affects those of lower socioeconomic standing, because in order to remove feelings of helplessness, you can do a couple things. You can work hard and get out of that helplessness and train yourself, or you can numb it.
Yeah.
And numbing it can be done through digital forms where you distract yourself, or through mind-altering substances to make you not feel those issues. And when they're so widely available, especially as marijuana is these days, I feel like it's a compounding issue.
No, that's right. I just noticed when I was walking home from the gym the other day, on 6th Avenue, and there, there's all these shops that sell, cigarettes and things, but they had listed, it was like every possible dopamine trigger. They didn't list porn, but they had like all these different products,
I'm sure they had
all these
pills
different ways.
For,
yeah, that's right. That's right. Because and who goes into them? It's going to be a class thing. It's marketing to working class people to say, here, numb your unhappiness. So
well, at least we have your first two being a little bit more positive with phone-free schools, more analog schools. And what was the second one? Remind me.
So the first one I said, we're already getting phone-free schools. So that's clearly going to happen. And there's just so many benefits from it. We haven't yet seen increases in test scores, but we're seeing a lot of other benefits. Laughter in the hallways. Teachers say that kids are more attentive. So that's going. The one I was referring to is now the next step is analog paths through school, especially elementary school, because sure, you can get the kids off their phones, but they've got a computer sitting on their desk all day long. It's called one-to-one devices. So I've been careful not to talk about EdTech until I knew more about it. In the book, I didn't say much about it. But now it's pretty clear one-to-one devices, putting a computer on a kid's desk and doing a lot of the day there is a really, really bad idea, because it mostly ends up on TikTok, YouTube, and video games.
Sure.
And so So a lot of parents now are rising up and saying, get this the hell out of my child's life. Why is there an iPad on my kindergartner's desk? Why? There's no reason for it. So I think we're seeing a big push, and that's, I think, going to go national because it's just so obviously true that kids need to develop basic skills. They need to learn to read and write. They need books and tablets, and computers are just really bad for them, for their education.